Good morning, everyone. Again, apologies for the slight delay. I guess technology had its own mind this morning. My name is Jumoke Akintaylor, and I'm the hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Sherry's Waiters is the clerk for this hearing. As she had mentioned, this hearing is being recorded, so please go ahead and contact us through Urban Forestry for any information that you need on the agenda. Public comments, we are going to start with addressing public comments that are not on today's agenda. And this public hearing is being held to consider hearing order 212607. And this is the removal of 3 street trees with 2 replacement adjacent to 201 Steiner Street. I believe it has been approved, and the staff approved the removals, and there were some protests recorded. So my job as the hearing officer today is to gather the facts for this hearing item, listen to your testimonies to help our Director of Public Works make a determination. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I'll forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director has the authority to make the final determination. Once the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them. And so if you want to be notified, I guess you you make that note and contact Urban Forestry. So the way the hearing goes is I will ask the public work staff to speak first, present the item, give us an overview of the process and how they determine the approval for the trees and how we got here today. Then we'll have each speaker present speak, the ones that are for or against the agenda. Those that have written comments can also submit those written comments to us. Once we have all that, then if there are any questions for the city agency to address, we would have them come up, speak, and comment on it. So each speaker today, we have 2 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers. When you hear the first bell, it means the speaker has only 30 seconds left. A second louder bell signifies that the time is up. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to anyone else. And if you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimonies to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the questions. Once all comments are completed, I will close the item. So we will now begin with the hearing. Are there any public comments on anything that is not on today's agenda? Sharice, that's what we're starting off with first, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda, but it is within the department's jurisdiction?
I see no hands this morning.
Okay. So we will proceed with the hearing. Can I have Ms. Susan go ahead with the presentation, staff presentation, please? Go ahead, Susan. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Susan Nawberry. I'm the acting urban forester for the Bureau of Urban Forestry at the Department of Public Works. First, I want to bring up why we're here, and then I'll go back to these slides. We're going to hear order number 212607 at 201 Steiner, and it's to consider the removal of 3 street trees with 2 replacement adjacent to 201 Steiner Street. The addresses are 522 Waller and 211 Steiner. So staff approved the removals and the public protested. It says we'll be replacing with 2, but we're actually going to relocate the 3rd one diagonally across the street, and we'll show that location later. Okay, so back to um, presentation. So our goal is to ensure clean, safe, and green infrastructure in the public right of way. And this means that we must balance growing and protecting the urban forest while maintaining the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. And this means dealing with infrastructure and maintaining trees when they are no longer sustainable, removing trees when they're no longer sustainable to maintain. Okay, and then just a precursor, Street Tree SF was passed in November 2016 and was affected in July 2017. And we're almost done with our complete first cycle. And this dictates how we maintain trees, where we maintain trees, and our equitable approach to tree maintenance. And this plays into some of the decisions we make. So every tree is supposed to be pruned every 5 years. We're very behind on that schedule due to a global pandemic and many ripple effects that cause setbacks to our maintenance strategy. But we're catching back up and we're going to close out this first cycle. And I want to point out that we're meant to distribute this work equitably across the city. And when a tree requires repeat maintenance that breaks the routine cycle, it kind of alters the equitability of the maintenance across the city. Um, yeah, so that's that. And so just to explain the basis of our authority, we have a tree ordinance. It's Article 16, the Urban Forestry Code, and it establishes authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues with tree maintenance. And a removal permit is required to remove all street trees, significant trees, or landmark trees. However, a permit is not required for a city-initiated removal, and that's what we're hearing today. There are some important updates from the code that this is already 4 years old, but it's good to remind everybody that the code does evolve. And if the department removes a tree, a replacement is required within 120 days, and it's to be added to a delayed replacement report. And we are working on producing that report, but it has its challenges. So I want to be forthcoming about that. If it can't be replaced, we must relocate in a nearby location, and you'll see that we've done that here in this case. So we have tree removal criteria, and we have a flow chart that guides us, but no two trees are reviewed in the same way. Every tree is unique, every site is unique, and we do not rubber stamp tree removals. We inspect every tree and we review them with the highest level of integrity. So we have a tree removal criteria if it's dead or dying and not thriving. If there are poor species for the location and the growth is no longer sustainable, I think a very narrow sidewalk and a tree that might have a canopy spread of 50 feet. If there's severe damage to private property that cannot be repaired without necessitating the removal of the tree, in that root pruning could make the tree hazardous. And then if a tree is hazardous, and that's a definition that we can go into throughout this presentation. And then there's construction-related removal approval criteria, and if people have questions about that, they're welcome to email me. But for the purposes of this case, we'll move past that and we'll focus on this street tree SF removal. So the trees we're hearing here are ficus trees, and two of the main issues that these trees have are poor taper with girdling roots, or they have conflicts with infrastructure, and we'll go into that. And if they have large stems with poor unions, and this means included bark. This is when bark grows between two narrow angles of attachment, and the growth of the bark will push apart these two unions. And so we'll demonstrate what a codominant stem looks like shortly. So this isn't to scare anybody. It's just difficult to explain what poor taper means without demonstrating why it's impactful. So here in this ficus, the tree is girdled by the growth here with, in this case, it's bricks, but sometimes they can just become girdled by the sidewalk basins that they outgrow. And often if the trunk is buried, it can also cause root decay and cause the tree to fail, which we may see in one or two of the trees, but mostly what we're dealing with are girdling roots. So here, unfortunately, the infrastructure has girdled the tree, and we try to prevent this as much as possible by disallowing bricks and basins now. But sometimes its actual roots can girdle the tree and cause the tree to fail. So this is what happens when a tree is girdled and cannot build tension wood, which supports the tree roots, supports the tree and helps the tree roots put tension on the tree and prevent it from failing. Here's an example of why the typical growth pattern of ficus are problematic. So this is what's called included bark. A poor union is when the angle of attachment is very narrow. And let's see, it can, here it's like a very narrow angle. So you want a wide angle of attachment with a visible amount of smooth bark, which we do not have here. So right here we have a lot of included bark, and it pushed away from the stem it was attached to and then failed. And then coupled with this, when you have trees that are pruned for road clearance, because we live in an urban environment and we have to work with trees that do not want to necessarily grow with our infrastructure and adapt for where they're planted. So because this tree had so much canopy at the top and a lot of end weight, and then it had a lot of included bark, this tree failed. So this is just an example of what a poor union looks like. And this is what we look for when we're assessing ficus trees. So then we'll go into the case, and I showed you this slide earlier, and we're considering the removal of 3 street trees at 201 Steiner Street at Steiner and Waller. Okay, so the first tree we're considering is this tree. It's 211 Steiner. We call it Site 2 because we order trees to flow of traffic effectively. And it has the deficiencies that this tree has. It just says poor condition, but the reason we say it has poor condition is because you may be able to see that there are some wounds in these limbs here on the right. It doesn't have a main stem that's upright. It has a large stem that is leaning outward. And it has missing canopy from limb failures on the upper left-hand side of the canopy. And this creates exposure to wind and it causes limb failures. So as you can see, you have a lot of exposed wood on this limb, and that creates what's known as a cantilever effect. So the major stems here all have included bark, which we discussed earlier, and you can also see a history of limb failures here. And then you'll see, so here is the cantilever we're talking about. It's leaning over into the road, and we always say a lean isn't always an indicator of failure, right? But in this case, we have exposed wood without any canopy at the bottom, and this pushes all the weight of the canopy at the end of the limb. And when you have a poor and weak attachment and an end weight at the end, you create a very large cantilever effect. And this can cause limb failures, and we've seen that there's limb failures on this tree from past scarring. Additionally, it does, because it has a lean and we'll show that it has a girdled root, it has a high likelihood of failing into the road, the way we saw that the first example of a tree with a girdled trunk. So this tree also has very little taper, and taper is what you need to demonstrate that the tree has reacted to wind pressures and has put on growth that protects it from failing. So this is an older photo because as you can see, someone put a box around these trees. And this is the girdling root. You can see it goes across the other root, and then what it does is it prevents the structural root from building tension wood that prevents the tree from failing, and it eventually girdles the tree, self-girdles itself, and it causes failure. Um, the other thing too is you have a combination of things that can cause failure here is you have a girdling root and then you have the tree is buried in soil. And when you have a tree that's has soil buried above the root crown, you end up having decay. So the combination of these two factors increases the likelihood of failure of this tree. The tree also has a lot of mechanical damage from vehicle strikes, which also accelerates its likelihood of failing. And you can see our inspector on the right there with her soil probe. And then here's the past limb failure on the right. That's from a weak attachment, and there's some decay in that stem. And then there's included bark here in the middle. And so you have a really large limb that's cantilevered into the road with a very tight union here. So this tree is considered in poor condition for these reasons. It exhibits very little taper, which increases its likelihood of whole tree failure into the road, and it has poor attachments, which increases its likelihood of limb failure. And here's some more examples of the included bark from the backside. So you can see that they have two stems that we call them codominant. It's when they're close to the same size, and they have a very narrow angle of attachment, and that causes bark to accumulate in between that crack and forces the tree to sort of spread apart. And really what it does is it prevents tension wood, which holds up a limb. It prevents that from growing. So we've proposed replacing the tree across the street and up the street. And we'll be sending a letter to this property owner and notifying them that we intend to plant a tree. And if they do appeal, there will be a hearing. And if anybody would like to attend that hearing, let us know and we will send you a notice. They may not appeal and they may accept a new tree. If so, we will plant a new tree here. Um, so the next tree is on Waller Street. It's over this parklet, so we didn't get a full length view. And it also has an unbalanced and cantilevered crown over the roadway. And we don't use the term unbalanced lightly because it's an overused term, but it's meant to demonstrate that if there are other defects in the tree, that the unbalanced canopy can increase the likelihood of failure. It only had one visible stabilizing root, which should be providing the taper, but it's girdled. And all the major stems have poor unions and included bark. So in the central union, they're equally sized, which we discussed codominant stems. When they're the same size, they have a higher likelihood of failing. And so here's a view of the stem on the left that is codominant and also leaning out into the road with a very tight union. It looks like a seam. And then it has a very interesting branching structure. They're kind of all twisting within each other, and that increases the likelihood of accumulated bark in between those unions. So this is to demonstrate that this tree lacks taper. And what you want is a tree that widens out at the base, but this tree demonstrates the opposite. And that means that there is not wood being put on, growth being put on at the base. And that means that there isn't reaction wood. And reaction wood, like I said, is called tension wood, and it prevents the tree from failing when there's excess pressure on the canopy due to wind or rain or both. And this is the girdling root that wraps around the trunk of the tree. And also there appears to have been some minor construction here something lodged in that girdling root. So this tree does have features that and defects that increase its likelihood of failure to either possible or probable, and that's like there's 4 ratings for true risk, and that's like the third or fourth or second or third. And this site is replaceable, so we will be replacing it with a large stature tree. And the arborist has selected a species, but we're open to suggestions. We've suggested like a linden or a zelkova, and they're a very large stature tree that provides a lot of shade, and we think that it'll go really well in this neighborhood. So this is that stem it has decay in it also, and so like I said, it's a very tight union, and there's not much room for those stems to grow anymore. So then they start to push apart, and then decay increases, and then you no longer have the ability to put on tension wood in between those 2 stems. Okay, and this is the next tree, tree 5. So it's all the way at the end of the property at 201 Steiner on Waller. And you can kind of see if you've been listening and can see that like these have exposed lower limbs, and all of the end weight is at the end of the limbs. And you can see that it has a very, very tight union at the middle. And closer up, you can see that there's a lot of codominant stems with a lot of included bark. There are no wide angles of attachments. These are all very narrow, and this significantly increases the likelihood of limb failure. And these are the girdling roots here. This is completely wrapped around the trunk, so this is of particular concern. And there was the basin was smaller here, and so the tree kind of became girdled by how small the basin was, and then we expanded the basin, but there's still the tree wasn't able to put on growth on this side of the tree because the sidewalk was girdling it, unfortunately. And this is what happens across the city. We often start with small basins, and we're working to increase our basin size, but these trees were planted in the 70s, and there's a lot of practices we don't do anymore when we're planting trees. But unfortunately, it's too late to reverse those practices with these trees. And then here's another image of that girdling root. So again, it's wrapping around the trunk, and it's preventing good structural growth at the base of the tree. And then here's a limb that has a very high likelihood of failure, and also the loss of at least 40% of the canopy of that tree. And I just want to point out that we're here first off because there was an error where a previous inspector had posted all 7 trees, and that was a mistake that we agree like should not have happened. But we reassessed these trees very carefully, and we're only proposing to remove 3 of them. And we didn't observe these defects in the other 4. So I hope that demonstrates that we took a very close look at these trees, and we're not aiming to make rash decisions. And because we pulled back those removals, like we agree, like most trees are not hazardous, but when they are, they're really impactful. So that's why we hope that we can regain the public's trust with this location, and understand that when we review these defects, we're trying to prevent issues like this. So that concludes our presentation for 201 Waller. And if the hearing officer has any questions, please let me know.
No, thank you so much. So when the error was made that it's not 7 trees, it's 3 trees instead. Was the public notified of that error?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that was my only question for now. Thank you. So do we have public comments or
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that we did send a letter to all 382 protests to make sure that everyone understood that we were taking this very
Three.
seriously. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then in the letter, you also explained the health of the trees and why it was necessary to remove those trees, because your presentation was very clear in describing, the risk associated with leaving those trees in place. So that was also clearly explained to.
Correct. So
Okay.
we reassessed those 3 trees before we sent the letter.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for now. So do we have any public comments on this? Okay, I see one hand. Anyone else? Okay, see everyone's hand is up. All right, okay. We'll go ahead and take the hands that are up. Cherise, please allow them to speak, and you can start the timer. Please go ahead, Andrea. You've been asked. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm
So Cherise
actually,
has just 1 second. I just want to make sure that Cherise has the timer started. Okay. Please go ahead.
I'm actually at the site of the trees posted for removal. If I'm able to share my camera, is that possible to be enabled?
I don't know. Let me see.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll
Yes,
promote you
we
to
have to
panelist.
promote. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm back.
Okay, so
So,
your clock will start now. Okay.
okay. So I'm here at the site of the trees, and you can see that they do provide a lot of usable space for people to enjoy the neighborhood. This street is kind of unique in the area because it has such a large tree canopy. And so some of these trees that are posted for removal, um, they are, it does seem like the arborist has some points about the tree's development, but to me, they appear very healthy and they seem to add a lot to the street. The other streets around here, they don't have the same canopy. And so they're not utilized in the same way by people in the neighborhood. This is one of the other trees that's posted for removal right there. And you can see all along the street provides a really useful canopy, I think, shade from the sun and from the rain. Yeah, I think it's notable to see how they fit into the environment here. And that it really would be a loss for the community. These trees are almost 60 years old, and it wouldn't be, it's not visible. Someone else here is telling me my visibles or my video is actually not showing up.
No,
I can
I
see
can
you.
see it. We, as the hearing officer, we can see it. I think those that are attendees may not be able to see it because they are not the panelist.
I see.
But this recording will be public and people can see it later.
Okay. Yeah, I think they add a lot to the neighborhood. It's a shame that the other attendees protesting the removal can't see them yet, but I think it really would be a drastic loss of greenery to this street and the surrounding streets because, again, the other streets in this area don't really have the same type of tree cover, so it is very unique.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Cherise, do you have the timer on or it's just okay? Dan Walsh is the next speaker. Just 1 second. I don't know if Cherise has the timer. Let me just go ahead and put it up. Okay, I believe Dan, we've asked you to unmute. Please go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for taking these comments. I appreciate your work trying to keep the city safe, and I also want to voice an opinion that it's not just that these trees are beautiful. I think it's really special, bordering on quintessentially unique, magical almost. This little corner of San Francisco where people gather in the shade of these trees, and I understand there's some risk. And I was wondering if you have looked into any other possibilities aside from removing these three trees. Like I've seen some trees in some circumstances where the held up or
So we are
attached
losing your audio, Mr.
to some other
Walsh.
place.
Oh, Mr. Welsh, I think we lost your audio for a second there.
Let's see. I'm just
Is it me or is it his audio?
It's a little choppy.
Okay.
But we don't have as many attendees as we
Okay.
expected, so I think we can give everyone the full 3 minutes.
Okay. So,
okay. I've switched internet connections. Is this better?
okay,
Yes.
this is better.
Great.
Yes.
I was asking if you've looked into other options aside from removing the trees, like attaching the tree to some sort of structure that would prevent it from falling into the street, or tying it maybe to the building with the owner's consent. One thing that occurred to me is that this area is so special that it probably increases the property value around here, and maybe the building owner would be interested in some sort of creative solution. I'm wondering if there's been any kind of discussion of creative solutions with the support of Cafe Rêve or the building owner to try to keep these trees from falling over in some other way. And also, I'm curious if you know the statistics on how many people have died or been injured in tree fall accidents or limbs falling off of trees in San Francisco, so we get some sense of how important this is from a public safety perspective.
Thank you. We also have, and Susan will take these questions after the comments, so she can take all of the elements. Maz Williams, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your presentation and for expressing the concerns about the stability of the tree. I just wanted to say that, as others have said, that it does provide a really unique and beautiful tree canopy. It provides shade and protection. I guess importantly, it also provides like a gathering space for people to connect and be in community. And I don't think the location that you've selected for replacement would provide a similar function for the community. Because on the opposite street, it's apartments and there's no cafe there, and then there's also no pottery shop and no gym. So the location where the trees are currently is unique in that it functions as a place for people to gather with adjacent supporting uh, like services, and the place that you've selected for the replacement would not function in that way, so it's not equivalent. And then also, it seems that from the presentation that there was an emphasis on the maintenance being challenging, but then when I look at the like SF Public Works street tree replacement list, a lot of those trees also say they require frequent maintenance. So I guess I'm confused about that distinction being made, even if I understand you're short-staffed. Like with the community support of 300 people, it seems like maybe it's worth giving extra time to that. And then also, I'm just worried that we're like caring more about vehicles than people in community. I understand like a lot of, or from talking with other foresters too, that the ficus in general are being removed across the city. And that part of that is largely due to just like potential damage to vehicles that are parked. But I think if we want to like move towards a more habitable and friendly city that is centered on the human beings that live in it, even moving towards something like Page Street, a slow street with less cars would improve the neighborhood even more. So I think we should care more about people and their habitat than we do about parked cars.
30 seconds.
And I guess I just really love them, and I would be very sad to have that loss of not just the trees, but the community space that it provides that isn't equivalent with the replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have Ian Storm Taylor. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Cool. I just want to say thank you, Susan, for the presentation. It was very insightful. And also that I love public works and think the like maintenance work that you do across the city is amazing. So thank you. I agree with like the sentiments of other people. I was the person who put up signs to kind of galvanize support in the neighborhood. So either sorry for that or whatever. But I think the thing that I saw when I came to see those like first set of signs was that there was, like you said, 7 trees, or like, it was essentially like the entire block was marked as like immediate removal. These trees are going to be removed without the ability to comment. So that's kind of why like I freaked out in the beginning. It was like, what the hell's happening? This place is like so beautiful. Why are we removing all these trees? I think your presentation helped actually. It seems like when folks went back and resurveyed the trees, that number was reduced, and it seems like a more reasonable approach to like have a intermittent replacement. So like, just a few of these trees would be replaced, keeping the general nature of that section of the street and allowing the trees to mature over time. I think because like the length to maturity for trees is so long, it makes the maintenance like issue so critical. And it just makes me think, as a person of the public, like there was some trust loss. So I appreciate you like commenting on that in your presentation. I think it feels like for improvements for public works, or to like rebuild trust for me, I would love to see potentially either some sort of like additional check on the maturity of trees when they're being considered for replacement, or potentially loosening the like tendency to replace purely for a mismatched species. And the reason I say those two things is it feels like when the inspector first went through, it was too easy for them to say, oh, let's replace this with like a better species, without sort of thinking about the entire, what would happen to this section of the neighborhood if you replace like 7 or 8 trees in one go. Like it felt a bit too kind of like spreadsheety, as opposed to like community engagement, I guess you could say. So I just want to say thanks for your presentation. I think the change in the approach is like reassuring.
30 seconds.
Cool. And I would just love to hear about how Public Works is thinking about making sure that this doesn't happen in the same way again, and especially like in neighborhoods that might have less resources to protest. Because you could say this is just like a bougie area of the city, which it totally is. But like if this is the plan, or this is the process that happens elsewhere, like other places will be losing trees at a faster rate, and that's like not cool. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Well noted. Mr. Naughty, John, please go ahead, sir.
Good morning. So the couple of things that I want to bring up. One, this is not the first ficus tree hearing that I've been at. I've been dealing with this for over more than 10 years on ficus trees. And we saved trees at Hayes Valley. We also on 24th Street, 18th Street, various parts of the city where you try to take out ficus trees. And you did have experimental pruning for these trees. And also, then the problem is the ones that you choose to pick out the 7. Well, you take the one at the end, that's going to cause problems to the next one down the line because that's a windbreaker. So that's on that side. And then the other issue is that you see there's a parklet. So of course people gather there. So that's an issue with them and wanting shade in that area because it's a parklet for that business that's already currently there. Then the next issue is that these you're continually trying to take off ficus. Some of them you don't even post; you just take them out, and you don't even tell the community. So I'm very glad to hear that over 300 people protested. I mean, I wish we had that type of neighborhood commodity other parts of the city when you do this because. Again, we're already lost 1% of our canopy citywide already, and this is only adding to it. And when ficus is one of the top 10 trees that are planted throughout the city, and you're taking them out just for whatever reason. I think that there are a lot more things going on here than is really being discussed, except for saying that it's a safety hazard, which it really is not. And I kind of like the creativeness what one person said about putting a pole, because you can put a pole, nothing saying in the works that you can't say put a pole if you're saying this tree's going to fall. And to support the tree, all I'm hearing is because you have money to take out a tree, you don't have money really to plant a tree. And also, since this is started by the city, therefore it's going to go on a delay plan. When there's no guarantee of when these trees will be put back in, and you've got over 300 people that are already concerned about the trees being taken out when you've taken out half of the, more or less, of the ones that you posted before. So you're going to hurt the other 4 that are left, and also they've been
30 seconds.
The trees talk to each other, and they're all going to be concerned about their neighbors being taken out and harm the corner there if they're taken out, and it's going to also create problems for the remaining 4, which again was never discussed. So there are a lot of issues here that are this presentation doesn't mean anything because you've been showing this presentation for Hayes Valley and so forth. There's nothing new here. So again, save the tree, save the money, and find a fix to keep the tree instead of removing the tree.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We'll have the next person, Sasha. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So yeah, first I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I think that was helpful in understanding your rationale. I wanted to just echo what a lot of other people said. I think this is a very unique situation because these trees are more than just street trees in other places. They provide a lot of community, and I've personally benefited a lot from the shade they provide. I also think that replacing these trees with a different species would not provide the same benefit. For example, in winter, these trees provide shade, whereas other trees lose their leaves. And so I think that would be really unfortunate and change the nature of the space in wintertime, for example, and also just reduce the magic that the current trees provide. I was also wondering about like creative solutions, like other people mentioned. Like, have there been considerations about, or have you considered different other ways to prune them or reinforce them to prevent splitting and the hazards associated with the existing trees? And also if you've considered replacing the tree on the corner of Steiner rather than just removing it and moving it down, because I think as someone else mentioned, it would not be the same to like move that to the other street. It would be really nice to replace that tree with preferably a ficus tree so that there's consistency and consistency in the trees on that street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have Jill Riley. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And just to echo what others have said, I really appreciate that detail and context in the presentation. I did want to say when these postings are made, I think it would be, a significant improvement to have this context posted at the notice site. So a lot of people might visually see that these trees are being cut down, but they don't have a sense of why. And obviously everyone that's spoken today has a sense of what the risks are a lot better than simply walking past and seeing that this canopy is being removed. I did want to say, in terms of the urban forestry's reasoning with equity and additional attention, obviously ficuses, can be a problem tree, but they do provide that biodiversity. I'd love to get a better sense of the timeline of risk with these trees. Is this, something that we expect within 10 years versus 50? This is obviously a preventative risk measure, but other than that, I mean, ficus is also, they have great heat tolerance. They obviously have this amazing dense canopy that many people have mentioned and provide that great shade. But they act as good air purifiers. They reduce that urban heat island effect. And I'd love to get a sense of, are we maintaining, the idea of removing many ficuses, or what is the risk and how are you selecting where these get taken? And again, one last thing is just that I don't think the replacement of these trees to the other side of the street will provide the same, effect that these have obviously given, and the way that they support this specific community space between this street on Steiner. So thank you for your time, and appreciate your taking comments today.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Josh Clip, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Josh Clip. I'm the vice chair of the San Francisco Urban Forestry Council. But for purposes of this public comment, I want to note that I'm the co-founder of Mission Verde. So just for context, in 2019, the city proposed to remove all 77 ficus trees along 24th Street. And without going into too much detail, it was a long process, but we managed to preserve 45 of those, essentially through aggressive pruning techniques. But what it meant is that the city had a certain amount of money to replace a certain amount of trees. What's important, I want everyone on the call to understand, is that 3/4 of tree planting money goes to watering. So what we did in that situation is we formed a partnership with Public Works. We formed a group of volunteers and we called ourselves Mission Verde. And what we did is we took on tree watering as a volunteer organization. And by taking on tree watering, we freed up city funds to plant 3 times as many trees along the cultural district and along that corridor. This was a big project, but it was a creative project. And I've heard a lot of people talking today about potential creative solutions. So I wasn't planning on making a comment today, but I wanted to make a comment to say that there are creative solutions out there to green your neighborhood even more than just replacing the trees that we're talking about today. Tree watering was a big project, but it really became more than just tree watering. It actually became a community project, forming friendships and connections all around that neighborhood. And it also improved the businesses along that street. So it seems like, if people are looking for a good solution, Hayes Valley is kind of prime territory for a project like this because of your topography. You're not on a big hill, so it's something that would be doable. The Bureau of Urban Forestry has my contact information. So if you would like to talk more about a Mission Verde type project in Hayes Valley, I would love to talk to you about that. I think we are at a time right now where our city is really stretched on resources, and our engagement is a way that we can not only improve our relationships between the city and the people it serves, but also our relationships with one another and improve our resilience for the future. So if anyone's interested in that, please reach out to Susan And I'm just giving her express permission and anyone at the department to give out my email address, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments and thank you for the assistance that you're offering. I'm sure it's appreciated. Patrick Walsh, please. Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm sitting right now under these beautiful trees where I've sat for many years, and I want to just appreciate the public servants on the call. Susan, really appreciate your work on this. Obviously, it's a difficult situation, and I'm sure that you wouldn't be in this line of work if you didn't care a lot about trees. And I don't really have anything substantive to add. I agree with everything that's been said on the call in terms of creative solutions would be nice to consider. If there could be community involvement in paying for some of that, supporting that work with our labor. I'm sure people around here, including the homes and the businesses, would both be happy to pitch in. So I would just ask you to just take one more look at this and see how many trees we could potentially save, because these really are very important trees in the neighborhood. There are trees that bring people together, and it might not have been apparent in a quick survey just how important these trees are, but thank you for taking the time and giving us the space to talk about it.
Thank you very much. And we have, I believe this is the last speaker. Tom, please go ahead, Tom.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks. First of all, I wanted to thank you for the presentation. I think I learned a lot about ficus trees, and I wanted to kind of echo some of the support of the specific trees in that neighborhood, bringing a lot of like value to that community in the way of shade and just making it a pleasant gathering space for pedestrians. I wanted to kind of ask the same question again about like what are the other options besides outright removal of the trees? Specifically things like pruning and support, or even just like removal of parking spaces nearby to like reduce general risk on cars. And secondly, in response to the pruning activity map, it seems like the department is kind of pruning fairly arbitrary sectors of the city. I was wondering if focus in the future could be brought specifically to higher pedestrian traffic areas. Yeah, I think as a community member who loves these trees, I would want to see the same level of emphasis on pruning and maintenance and general growth of the urban canopy in the areas where like there's a bunch of pedestrian activity going forward. Yeah, also I was curious about the replacement options. I think I wanted to echo that like the replacement option for Site 1 kind of seems distant from where like most community gathering actually happens on that block. And I was curious if we could see some analysis in terms of like how the replacements compare in terms of shade and seasonal coverage, and whether multiple tree replacement could be considered here, given that these are very mature ficuses that have large canopies, being replaced with like maybe several trees rather than just a one-to-one replacement. Yeah, thanks. That's all.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments or response to this protest? I don't see any other hands up. Okay.
No other hands at this time.
Yeah, thank you. Susan, do you want to address some of the questions that were raised? Do you want to speak
Yes.
to it? Okay, thank you.
I do apologize for not explaining why this tree can't be replaced. So, daylighting laws that require furnishings and vehicles to be clear of 20 feet of the approach of an intersection. So if like a pedestrian is hiding behind this tree, not purposefully hiding, but just trying to cross the street, and quite frankly, we know it's difficult to control drivers and vehicle sightlines. The idea being that if this furnishing area is clear, then the visibility to intersections is improved. So it's against city code to have furnishings within 25 feet of the intersection. If they're taller than 36 inches in height. So that's why it can't be replaced in front of the stop sign. And we did look around the neighborhood in these areas as close as possible for replacements. And this was the closest site that had that was clear of all visible conflicts. So that's why we picked this. And in terms of stature, somebody asked, when we say large stature, we mean at maturity. The problem with planting large box-sized trees that are large upon transplant is that they take like triple the water to establish. And their growth is outpaced by smaller trees in the long run. So, for example, there's 15-gallon, 24-inch box trees and 36-inch box, and that's progressively larger sizes. A 15-gallon tree planting will outpace a 36-inch box tree planting in 2 to 3 years. And that's because young trees need less water to establish, so their establishment period is less stressful. And so we are choosing large stature trees. However, they won't be large going in, but in a few years, they will be. And that kind of leads me to, yes, there will be gaps in canopy when the trees are removed, even when we replace with young trees, because the speakers are right that we're removing large trees and replacing them with small trees. But this is beneficial for two reasons. One, we stratify the age of all these trees so you don't lose them all at once. Second, we can perform that ficus pruning that we performed on 24th Street on the remaining trees. So, one of the commenters brought up a good point that on 24th Street we did save many of the trees, but we also removed several of them. And I want to point out that there's compounding factors. It's not just one thing like pruning or one thing like girdling. These trees have both. But we did retain 4 of the 7. And so we can perform that pruning on these trees. And with the exposure from more light, they will sprout out like lower in their canopies. And the pruning is kind of shocking at first, but 24th Street, those ficus have they have much better structure than they did when we went into that project. So to kind of mitigate some of the concerns about wind exposure, we will be doing some pruning on the remaining trees, and then hopefully it's kind of called retrenchment pruning, but that's usually used for very old trees. We'll do reduction to reduce the overall cantilever effect, and then they'll resprout. And with the exposed additional sunlight, I think we'll see some better, more evenly distributed canopy on the remaining trees. And then there was something else someone wanted to. We are going to work to replace these trees within 120 days. Because of the importance to the community, and the impacts from failures aren't just for cars, but what we find is we have road closures and the Muni can't go through. So we're actually very concerned about our public infrastructure with these failures. And then somebody asked how many people have been injured in San Francisco by falling limbs. In the last 10 years, it's been about 3 people injured and 1 death from a street tree. Sorry.
Thank you.
I hope I got everyone's questions.
Yeah, there was another question about how long, in terms of the risk for the trees, that are you looking at in 5 years, in 2 years? That was another question that came up.
When we look at likelihood of failure, that is a tree we consider that should be removed. We're thinking that the likelihood could be within 1 to 2 years. If we think that a tree isn't going to fail until like 5 years or so, that's a tree that can be reassessed later or potentially pruned for mitigation.
So this one, the likelihood of it failing is in 1 to 2 years. That's the assessment.
with risk assessment, it's never something that is that there's not a calculation that's that quantitative, but there's a combination of features and scores and ratings, and we can produce a tree risk assessment report for this if people want. And yeah, so it's not it's not as quantitative, but it's an estimate.
Okay, thank you. I think I see a question in the chat, and I can read it if you want, or you can put it from the chat. So the question, one of the question was, ooh, I just moved it.
Yeah. And it's your discretion as a hearing officer if you need these answers to make your decision. Otherwise, people can email me to ask questions.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to hear it.
Okay.
You know, and also it would be helpful, yes. You mentioned that the tree replacement would be large in stature. You already addressed that. How would the size, you'd address that. Then there was another question that I just passed on. This is, could you also address including this kind of risk assessment options with the tree removal notice? So that's more of a comment. I had seen one, and I can just go through it and then ask you later on if I need clarification on it. I had seen one there. I think that's it. So are there any other questions? No other public comments? I don't see any other hands up. Okay. Oh, I see. I think we can take Tom because he hasn't spoken. Mr. Welsh, I think we've taken you twice. So I don't. Can we take Tom?
It's up to you.
Yeah, please go. Let's go ahead and take Tom, and then we'll bring the hearing to a close if there are no other new hands up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to re-echo part of my comment earlier. I think I sent it in the chat, but I wasn't sure if you saw it again. But the question that I didn't hear answered was whether maintenance and canopy expansion going forward could be focused towards high priority areas with higher pedestrian traffic like this one, and how pruning and maintenance is done and prioritized.
Right.
Like this is clearly an area with a lot of community support, and it's sad that we got to this point with it.
So the way our street tree program works is you see all the gray area. That means those are areas we actually already pruned, and those areas were given priority ratings based on our 2017 ArborPro census, where somebody went out and looked at every single all 126,000 trees and gave them a pruning rating. And then you can see that there's little squares. So for the number of trees in that square that had a high maintenance need, we addressed those first. And that's why we're about to close this first cycle, because as you can see, the heart of the city where we have the most trees are all gray. We pruned those first in 2017, and the reason why everything remaining is green in the western neighborhoods is because they have very low canopy with small trees, and so they're actually receiving service last. And as you can see, there are a few spots in the Bayview too that are receiving service last, and that's linked to the lower tree canopy, which leads me to saying that we're also focusing most of our tree planting in those low canopied neighborhoods.
Thank you so much. If there are no other public comments, and this is really for those that came late and haven't had a chance to speak, for those that have already spoken, there won't be a chance for you to speak again. So just asking if there's any other public comments from those that have not had the opportunity to speak. Okay, I don't see any hands up. All right, if there are no other comments or hands up, I will be closing this hearing. Thank you all for your time. I would have our recommendations, as I said earlier on, to the director, and I'm sure you would hear about the outcome of this. But your comments have been taken very seriously, and I'll be making my recommendations based on the staff's presentation and the comments that I've had. So thank you for your time and have the good rest of the day.